Hello everyone, my name's Ethan. This is my channel Gringo Campesino. So again, it's the night. I don't really have a beautiful landscape to film in front of, so I'm trying out this curtain and my office setting. So follow-up video to the previous one that I did. I'd like to talk about cars and what kind of car you should buy in Colombia. I see many foreigners when I lived in Panama and also here in Colombia. They make some pretty awful decisions when they're buying a car. Not only the price, sometimes they get cheated, sometimes they're amazed at the value of a used car, but they make a lot of mistakes and often regret it. So I'm trying to help you overcome those mistakes. So I have a list of 9 things that you should really consider when you're thinking about buying a car. First of which is mechanics. Um, you can always find a good mechanic in the big cities. You will have mechanics who are certified to work on almost every car. However, it is really convenient to be able to go to the local mechanic wherever you're living and him to be able to work on your car. So most cars, they can do simple things like change the brakes and modify certain things on the car. But if you're going to want to go to the local mechanic, you want to keep things simple. Don't have too many electronics, don't have too many computers in the car, keep it simple. Also, some things are not as reliable in the weather here, so if you have something that breaks down due to high levels of humidity or rain, you want to make sure your mechanics can work on those electronic components. Me personally, I have an extremely simple car, and I love it because I can take it to any local mechanic. It's a car that's very common here in Colombia, so I can get whatever I need done fixed by the local mechanic. So the second part is cost of parts. So the older cars, the most common cars, they will have their parts found just about everywhere, which is point 3, availability of parts. So you have the cost of parts and the availability of parts that go together. So sometimes you will have to order a part from the city or have it imported. That obviously increases the cost, and also it takes time to fix your car. There's not really a good option to have a loaner car from the mechanic. You're just stuck without a car, or you might have to rent a car. So the fourth point is the resale value of the car. So many people are amazed at how well cars retain their value in either in Panama or in Colombia. In Panama, I bought around the year 2011. I bought a 2000 Nissan Frontier single cab for about $7,500, if I remember right. Over the course of, I believe, 5 years, I ran it into the ground. Got to a point where I could no longer keep it aligned because I had bent up so much on the truck. Um, the AC was starting to die. Just the truck was completely beat up, and I was still able to sell it for $6,000 after about 5 years and adding 50,000 miles or so onto it. And all those were rough miles. So the resale value kind of bottoms out at most cars around $3,000 to $5,000 to $6,000 depending on the car, where the main strategy is don't be the last one to have the car. You're going to lose out the most. So try to rotate your cars, taking advantage of the resale value, and know that the cars that are used are going to be expensive. The fifth thing is make sure your car can handle the potholes and the speed bumps and the rough roads in Colombia. Don't buy a low car. Don't buy a car with really tight suspension that doesn't have the ability to handle some of the waviness in the roads. I have been driven in some parts of the country, and I thought I drove off a cliff. And because I had butterflies in my stomach, I felt the sensation of falling. the road was just so uneven. There was probably a 8 8 centimeter, or sorry, 8 inch, so it was about 18 centimeters drop in the road. And it was just because the road had shifted from a landslide. It was paved over, but it was not a gradual dip. And the local people knew it was there, but there was no sign. Just drove over it. I was lucky I have my car, which is fairly high and good suspension, and didn't do anything to my car, but it scared the hell out of me. The point 6 is manual versus automatic transmission. I fully recommend you get a manual car here in Colombia. In the U.S., my understanding, I'm not really perfect with engines, but my understanding is a modern transmission is very efficient and sometimes more efficient than the driver themselves on highway good conditions. The problem is in Colombia, those conditions are very rare. So if you're going to be in the city, stuck in traffic, maybe you want to get an automatic, but get a fairly high car so you don't get stuck in any of these potholes or bottom out going over speed bumps. If you're ever going to reach an incline or to pull anything or have a heavy load, make sure you have manual. Many people in Panama, when I was there, they would buy automatic cars, trucks, because they didn't really know how to drive a manual. And the incline on a lot of the roads down here is very steep, much more than you would be allowed to have as a grade in the US or Europe, I believe. And so when you load your truck with some things, you're really stressing your transmission. So if you have a manual, I frequently have to drop it into four-wheel drive, low gear, to get up some of these roads up into people's farms to pick up some seedlings and things like that. So really consider getting a manual if you're comfortable driving it and you're living in the countryside. If you're in the city and you're just dealing with traffic, maybe automatic can work for you. Point 7 is blend in. I hate getting my car washed. More than anything, after my car is washed, there is a noticeable difference on the way people look at me. When my car is dirty, I drive through police roadblocks without them stopping me. They usually just wave me on because they frequently just think I'm a farmer in a dirty old car. Whereas when I have it washed and it's shiny, I feel like maybe it's psychosomatic, maybe it's just in my head, but I feel like they stop me more frequently. And I don't mind looking poor. Less likelihood of me getting robbed. So I've never been robbed. It could be because my car is dirty. It could be because I look like a mercenary. But that's the theory I'm going with. And number 8, so again, going back to the incline of the roads, make sure that you have a car that can handle the incline. So more than just the cargo, more than the transmission, make sure you have something that has traction to handle incline. In some cases, I have been going over the crest of a hill. It's a side road, it's not a highway in any way, but the angle, the pitch of my window to the roof of my car made it so I could not actually see how steep it was. And a couple of cases, I just hit it in reverse and just decided not to go down that hill because I didn't want to put the stress on my brakes. So brakes, traction, make sure the car is strong enough with the load you have in the car. Make sure your car can handle steep inclines. So I would recommend having a car where you can have a low gear. And then the last point, point number 9, is don't assume the fuel quality is up to high standards. In Panama, I unfortunately had a tank that had some water in it, and I had to completely drain my diesel truck and get out all the water and fill it up again. Thankfully, the diesel truck was relatively simple. It cranked up after I got the water out. There are cases where in some of the low-lying areas, if there's some flooding, they might get some water into the fuel, and they're not intentionally doing it, but the chances of them taking the loss and filtering out that fuel and draining the tank is very low. So they're just going to pass it on as to the consumer and hope those consumers come back. So, what kind of car, after all these points, these 9 points that I made, what kind of car should you get? I chose to get a Mitsubishi Montero. There's a number of versions of it. I have a very old version, 97. It's a version that goes back to the early 80s, hasn't really changed much. There's the more modern versions that were sold in the American market that has fuel injection, V6, everything like that. I have just a small engine carburetor, very, very simple, no electronics, EMP, nuclear winter proof probably. I don't have to worry about the quality of fuel because it is a carburetor. Not exactly the most ecological car. It has no catalytic converter, but I'm keeping a hunk of metal on the road, and the expenditure and resources to make a new car is saved because I'm using this very old car. So there's always a balance there. I would recommend any Toyota. Any Toyota keeps its resale value in South America. People really respect that, especially a Toyota truck. If you want a pickup truck, a Hilux, you can't go wrong with it. Any kind of land cruiser. I would say don't buy a Land Rover. I've had one of those. They suck. And final point, don't buy a sports car. Never buy a sports car. You can't get anywhere with it. You might be able to impress your neighbors, but you're not going to be able to drive anywhere. You're impressing your neighbors because it's parked in your driveway. There's a few people I've seen with sports cars. They zoom down the new highway, but they're such a pain in the ass to get stuck behind because even though they have this fast car, they can't drive it fast because they can't go over the speed bumps or through the potholes. And me and my little four-cylinder, horribly balanced Mitsubishi SUV gets around them really easily because I can drive over gravel. So those are some things to consider. If you have any questions, write me an email. This is Gringo Campesino. See you next time. Thank you.